Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Nigel, and in today's video I wanted to cover a topic that I get a lot of requests for, and that is color grading. Now, typically on my YouTube channel, I try to steer clear of color grading tutorials, mostly because I'm not a professional colorist, and I also kind of think that color grading has a lot to do with personal preference. There are some people that really like the way certain things are graded and some people that don't. I know a lot of YouTubers that color grade their videos in a certain way that I personally don't like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that watch my videos and don't like the way that I color grade. So it is all kind of personal preference and what kind of look you're actually going for, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, I guess you could argue that there is a wrong way to color grade, but really it all just kind of depends on what you like and what kind of look you're going for. So I kind of just wanted to show you what my approach is from taking the image out of my GH3 and getting it from looking like this to looking like this. I have a certain way that I like to color my videos, and it's just something that I personally like. So I'm going to show you my process when doing that in 2020, and I've done other color grading tutorials that you can check out right here. I got a little playlist for you, and you'll notice that like from the first color grading video that I did to now, my techniques and the way I like to get my final image have changed a lot. So this is something that I feel like you learn and you get better at as you go, just like with anything in filmmaking. But color grading for sure is something that I feel like everyone should learn on their own. And so I'm not really going to be teaching you a step-by-step process on how you color grade, but more so what my thought process is from taking my image out of the GH3 and getting it to look how I do in my videos. So I'm going to be showing you how I do it in Adobe Premiere Pro, but it should be similar techniques if you're using Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve. So here we are in Adobe Premiere, and I'm going to be color grading two different video clips for you today. The first clip is going to be just a controlled environment here in my office. So this is my A-roll, and this is how I would normally color grade anything that I shoot here in my office. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we're in our color tab here in Premiere. Now, with anything that I shoot here in my office, I actually have a preset that I use because I know that the preset is going to work on every A-roll shot that I do because my lights and my white balance are all the same. And that actually brings me to getting it right in camera, which I'll let future Nigel explain to you. No amount of color grading, no amount of tweaking your colors, no LUT is ever going to fix bad lighting. So that's step number one, is make sure that you have your lighting locked down. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter how good you are at color grading, you're not going to be able to fix a poorly lit image. So right now I have a key light and I have a rim light that's just kind of giving me a little bit of separation, and I'm exposed properly. And that's the biggest thing, is that a poorly exposed image is going to be a lot harder to work with. So before you take a bunch of courses in color grading or buy a bunch of LUTs, make sure that you have your lighting down, because if you don't, then all of that other stuff is going to be for nothing. And also make sure that you get as much in camera as you possibly can. That's at least my personal preference. If I can get it at least 75% of the way in camera, that's what I prefer to do. That way I only have to use the color grading to just push it that extra 25% and get it looking where I want it to. So that means make sure that your white balance is set properly, and do as much things as you can to make sure that if you do have any little indiscrepancies when it comes to your color or your white balance, that you can fix it in post easily. That's why for every video that I do, I always white balance it with this card beforehand, and then I usually always hold this up to my face, right around where my face is, just so I can check middle gray and get my exposure and white balance locked in, just in case anything goes awry. So one of these little gray cards is a really good thing to have with you. Lighting and getting your white balance set properly, those are really important. So just make sure that those are dialed in before you start messing with your colors. So assuming that you expose yourself properly and you got your white balance right, what I think is actually a really good idea is to do all of your corrections that you need to do for your A-roll shot and just save that as a preset or maybe even a LUT. And then all you have to do is just apply it to your A-roll shot, and that's going to get your colors to where you kind of need them to be before you do any more type of color grading to it. So what I do is I actually have a preset that I have, and I just drag and drop it right on to my A-roll. As you can see, that changed the shot a lot, and that got me about, I would say 75% of the way. Now, I don't typically stop there, but sometimes I do. Sometimes it's just like, you know what, that looks good. And for A-roll, I think that's totally sufficient. So basically what that preset did is it corrected some of the problems that I typically have with footage that comes out of my Panasonic GH3. As you can see, there's a lot of magenta in this shot, but after I apply my preset, it just kind of gets rid of the magenta and pulls the colors back to where they're supposed to be. Now, if you have a camera that struggles with color a lot, I think that it's pretty crucial to color correct your shot and get all of your colors looking how they normally look. And it really helps if you use the same lights for your A-roll shots, because then all you have to do is just drag and drop a preset. And if you shoot with a Panasonic camera, I actually made this preset that I have for my GH3 available on my website, and I'll leave that in a link in the description below. But that basically got us to where we're at right now. And as you can see, I adjusted the magenta shift, so I shifted a little bit more towards green, and I messed with the temperature, and I just messed a little bit with the exposure. Now, the next thing that I do is I actually add a plugin called Film Convert, and I feel like Film Convert really helps take it that extra mile and just get it looking a little bit more the way that I like it. I've actually done a whole video on Film Convert before. If you want to check that out, I'll put the link right up there. I'm going to take Film Convert Nitrate, put it on to my A-roll shot, and instantly it looks horrible, but that's because I haven't input the camera settings yet. And Film Convert actually has profiles for a bunch of different cameras, so it actually has my Panasonic GH3, and I shot in natural for this shot. So that brought it back, like brought my skin tones back and making it look normal again. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the grain strength down to 0, because if you add a lot of grain, you'll see it on YouTube, but typically if you just wanna add like that little subtle hint of grain, you're not gonna see it with YouTube's compression, so I turn that off. And then on the film chroma, I usually take that all the way off because it preserves the color in my overall shot a little bit more. And then I usually take the film luma down to about 75%. Yeah, let's take it down to about 70. And that's typically how I would get my shot looking. And I actually really like the Kodak 5207. You have a bunch of different film stocks to choose from with Film Convert. But I mean, that might seem like a little bit of a cop-out because I'm using Film Convert for this, but Film Convert is just such a great plugin, and I would say that if you have the money, it's definitely worth every penny because it just cuts so much time out of my color grading process, and it just gets it to look exactly how I like it to look. So let me go to a more uncontrolled environment and I'll show you how I take an image from start to finish if I was shooting out in location. Okay, so here is how I would grade something that's shot kind of in uncontrolled conditions. But right now I have a shot that was taken with my GH3 and I had a black Pro Mist filter on there. First thing I'm going to do is go into my basic correction and I'm going to take the tint more towards green. And what that's going to do is it's going to fix the little bit of magenta shift that happens with the GH3. So I usually put about -5 on there. That just gets the skin tones back to looking normal. And I might bump up the temperature just a little bit, so it looks like a nice outdoor scene. Might see what it looks like if I add a little bit of exposure. I've always found that the GH3 does typically well if you try to bring up the shadows ever so slightly. I'm gonna add a little bit more contrast to this shot, not too much. I'll take down the shadow or the highlights just a little bit because there is obviously some blown out spots here. Right off the bat, we're just doing some corrections and doing just a little bit of tone corrections here as well. So now I'm going to go into the curves and I'm going to go to the Luma versus Sat and Sat versus Sat, put little keyframes here, and I'm going to pull all the saturation out of the shadows. And that's just one extra way. Sometimes I don't like to go too crazy because it takes saturation out of the skin tones because the skin tones land in the shadow area sometimes. So I don't go crazy on it all the time, but it just helps give it a little bit more of that filmic look. So right now, I kind of like how it looks. This is what the original shot looked like, and I just did some minor corrections, and now it looks like this. So I would typically be totally fine just having this be my final image, but as you can see, I don't honestly do that much, and that's because I try to get as much right in camera as I possibly can, so I don't have to try to do a bunch of corrections and weird stuff in post. So yeah, that was my color grading process for my YouTube videos in 2020. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did and maybe found it helpful, it'd be really cool if you hit the like button and maybe leave me a comment. But yeah, if you'd like to check out more of my videos, you can click on either side of my face. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next time. Later.
Enough.